I'm very happy to welcome Mark Talbert to the Audio Garden today to talk about his book, Your Yard is a Garden: Sustainable Gardening for Landscaping, Lawns, Shrubs, Trees, and Produce. Thank you for joining me today, Mark.
You're welcome, Martha. I'm glad to be here. It's my pleasure. I like to
You,
talk about gardening.
oh, me too,
One of
all
my
the
favorite
time.
subjects.
And mine as well. And in fact, I came across you at the Feed and Seed store in Travelers Rest, South Carolina, where you were taking a very proactive approach to marketing your book, which I like to see. You were offering it for sale at the Feed and Seed store. I hope that that's been going well.
It has. It's slow, but my oldest son, who is in marketing, says I'm not very good at promoting anything, and so it's been slow, but it's been fun. I like to talk about the book. It's just an enjoyable subject.
We're a show for readers and writers, so I always like to ask about those things. And maybe we could continue by just talking about what inspired you to write the book in the first place.
I think it's mainly from my background in college. I had a master's degree in agriculture, and I became a Clemson Extension County agent. And within that process, we were trained in many aspects of agriculture and horticulture. And then our duties expanded over the years to disseminate information to help folks learn how to uh, grow things, to help farmers with their crops and their livestock and such. So within all that process of this training, I thought this is pretty neat. This is a lot more fun than I would have thought. There was serendipity in that was encouraging. And then in the meantime, I lived and worked in a small community, and I had some people ask me about landscaping, and that was sort of the open door into the thought about the book, because I became a part-time landscaper, and then it was a collection of how to get information out to the folks. And I wrote newsletters and wrote for the state newspaper uh, monthly on horticulture, ornamental horticulture, turf, sod, silviculture, and such. And then the whole process became part of a challenge to say, well, how do I communicate? How do I communicate to taxpayers, to the citizens in the county on how to actually sustainably grow plants and to function in their yards? And that
So,
one,
like Clemson Extension is more of a program geared towards farmers and like agricultural practices. Am I correct about that?
not exactly. No, it's a multifaceted subject area with being a county agent, and the impetus was it was the land grant universities did develop a system of technology and research and horticulture and science for farmers, but it has blossomed out into many subject matters,
I
including
see.
silviculture and sod and master gardeners and gardening, vegetable gardenings and ornamentals and landscaping. So we're public servants to everybody.
To everybody. But
For
the
different
title
needs.
of your book kind of implies to me this marriage between farming and having a backyard garden. When you say your yard is a garden, I think you're trying to convey that idea, correct me if I'm wrong, that people can go beyond sort of just having a lawn and some trees out there.
Perfect. That's it. The motif is to consider your yard as a garden and then go through sustainable practices, develop sustainable practices and habits to develop and let your yard grow through your cultivation, your nurturing in a sustainable way. in a practical way, in a logical way, in a reasonable way, not in the ways that I have seen over the years in the many yards I've been in. And so
So
that's where the book came from. I said, well, I just need to write about this.
okay. So sustainable is a word that I hear a lot. I think we all hear that word, but maybe everybody doesn't really stop to think about what you mean by that or what you mean by that in the context of your yard. So maybe you could just give us a good definition of what you mean by sustainable practices.
I would love to. Sustainability that word is built off an old word that we were taught in high school. I was taught in high school many years ago, and it was conservation. And then that flipped into preservation. And it was the idea of preserving the environment, the ecology. Those were key words back in the day. They don't seem to be used that much anymore. That tells you how old school I am. But I love those words. And so sustainability is the concept of developing a plan in your yard that is workable and doable and can maintain itself with your help without a lot of effort and without spending a lot of money, without having big holistic renovations and possibly even doing it a little bit at a time. And a number of the practices that everyday people have in their yards are not sustainable. They don't realize it.
Like what?
Like pruning shrubs. Oh, well, I love these committees. Let's get some committees. I love these big ligustrum. Let's get some ligustrum. And they're too big. They grow up just like kids do, and they become too big. Well, the answer to that in everyday life, it was fine, good. It'll be all right. Don't worry about it. We'll prune them back. Well, what that does is it stresses the plant. Even the concept of pruning seems to be innocuous. And in a way, if it's done correctly at the right time with discretion, it can be innocuous. But taking 10 feet tall plants down to 5 feet is not innocuous. It's stressful. And there's a whole chapter that has to do with what folks would say, oh, I don't need to read this. But it's about anatomy and physiology of a plant. How does a plant work? And it emphasizes photosynthesis. Photosynthesis is everything. And every time we take a plant and prune it back and remove all those leaves, we have reduced its capacity for photosynthesis to take place. And without that, it can't make its own energy, can't make its carbohydrates. And little by little, over time, Martha, that stresses the plant enough that the plant goes into decline. Well, those are the scenarios that I would see as a landscaper, and the people would say, well, what happened? And oftentimes it's pretty easy for me to strongly suggest that it was just over pruning too frequently, too often, especially even I'll pick on men, husbands. Oh, I got to get out there and prune that plant back. I got to make it look like a boxwood. And I say, well, if you're going to box up plants and make them look flat and square, you may as well just get some plywood and paint it green and put it out there.
Okay. So I'm hearing you say sustainable in terms of the energy that it takes to sort of go out there and work in the yard, and also the types of plants that you're choosing um, to fit in that landscape. What about the more environmental definition of the word sustainable in terms of, sustainability of the planet?
Sustainability of the plant and the planets revolves around how we treat our soil, how much water we use, how we might overplant where we're actually consuming too much nutrients and too much water because we planted too much of everything. How we put 4 trees where there was only a place for 1 tree. And then it goes through the whole concept that you have to prune back. My neighbor just cut down a great big water oak this morning because there wasn't enough room for it to live. So that has a price, and the price is somebody's got to come and exert a lot of energy uh, to cut the tree down, to to prune the plants back. Then they got to use energy to get it loaded up and out of the yard, and then they got to use energy to get it into a, a landfill, a recycling center. So all that is a burden on energy, and energy in the terms of gasoline, energy in the terms of um, mobility, and in terms of municipalities. Martha, I work a good bit in small neighborhoods, newer neighborhoods. They're very condensed. The lots are 0.21 of an acre, 0.21 hundredths of an acre, or 0.34 of an acre. They don't have pickups, so they have to pay somebody to come pick it up. That's not sustainable. Um, just like somebody that cuts grass and bags it all up, and then they got to haul it off.
Mm-hmm.
And then it goes into a big landfill. That's not sustainable. We don't have landfills like we used to. And landfills are just big holes, and they just fill them up, and eventually they get filled up. And then what happens next? So if we could take our residue, plant residue, and use it in our own yard, that would be a world of difference onto the balance of energy and how things are used. And we can recycle the nutrients from those branches and the leaves from grass and the leaves from trees and so forth.
So you're talking about mulching and composting, I assume. And I'm thinking about how you started your chapter on soil by saying that dirt is sort of a four-letter word that we don't want to talk about. Well, soil is as well, but maybe we could talk about the difference between soil and dirt.
Okay. Well, that's just a play on words.
Yes.
Clearly, they're the same. But we were taught in soil science 50 years ago it's soil. You don't call it dirt because that has a negative connotation. And the whole impetus in the beginning of everything in the yard is taking care of the soil. And that includes aeration. That includes thinking about, do you have a lot of worms? If you have a lot of worms in your soil, it's probably a healthy soil. Worms are the canary in the coal mine. If it's a dry, red brick clay soil, that's one of the things we have to deal with. But there are ways to deal with that instead of giving up and saying, oh, I can't do anything with it. And it's covered in the chapter on soils and soil preparation. But soil's just a fun word. It sounds better than dirt. That's all.
Okay, but I think you were kind of leading into the idea that, of building the soil. You're talking about keeping clippings and things and not sending things to landfill. And so you are actually building your soil by doing some of those things, right?
Absolutely. To compost and then incorporate back into the soil to plant successfully. And it doesn't really matter if it's sweet corn or caladiums. You have to prepare the soil, and you want a nice, rich, fertile soil. And we don't have that in Greenville County. We don't have that in the upper parts of South Carolina. We got red clay soil. I am still an active landscaper. Martha, I used to take a shovel to the yards that I visited and would dig a hole. And after about 50 holes, I figured out, guess what? We all have clay soil. And
Right.
so that's where compost comes in. Compost, organic matter is everything for improving the health, the tilth, the vigor of the soil. And that's how you get healthy plants. Um, it just adds up. But if one doesn't understand these principles, then it doesn't mean anything to them, and they just go on with the same kind of habits that they've been doing for forever. And then they say, well, I plant plants and they die. My grass died. What happened? If I just saw my neighbor get their yard cut and there's a big dust storm raises up,
Hmm.
soil, dust blowing in the breeze.
I see that often all around Greenville. And so What's wrong with that, and what's the remedy to it?
Okay. What's wrong with it is something extremely simple. Besides soil fertility and the pH of the soil, those are critical aspects of it. But one of the bigger components that I call it operator error is we mow our lawns too frequently, too short. And that exposes the grass and the soil to the elements, to the wind, to the sun, to the rain. And little by little, the grass we're trying to cultivate decline. So we have to take better care of the lawn, of the sod, of the grass. It is the great outline to the yard. And in order to do that, we have to water in a timely fashion. Doesn't it all suggest that you need to have underground irrigation? Because you don't. We don't need that. But timely watering is the responsibility of the yard owner. And these are some of the messages in the book is we need to take responsibility for this yard and not brush it off to somebody that's in the mow and blow business who we might think is an expert. If one was to study the book, it wouldn't take too long before one could figure out, this is pretty valuable and I can put this into play. And then you're outside, you're enjoying the benefits of fresh air, away from computers and concrete and commercials, and have an opportunity to become more satisfied with the work that you're doing. Oh, no, it's not work. The gardening that you're doing, the sustainable gardening that you're doing in your yard.
And this book, I think it really does reflect your years of work with the Clemson Extension and the various other things you're doing. It's just full of really it's very informative in the sense of understanding the processes of nature and what's really going on in your backyard, how the plants actually survive each part of each process. And I just wanted to run down the names of some of the chapters. I was looking at them while you were speaking. If I can find my place
You mean
here.
you weren't listening to me?
I was looking and I was listening at the same time, I
Okay,
guess,
perfect. I like
please.
it.
Yes,
I
I'm
like
absolutely paying attention.
it. Good.
But you have the soil is the foundation, which we spoke about a bit. Get to know your yard. Um, Plant nutrients, what plants eat. Then you have plant anatomy and physiology. I mean, it's really a textbook in a lot of ways, but maybe a little more engaging than most college textbooks. Landscaping for balance, how to plant, what to plant selection, homegrown vegetables, varieties and problems, nurture and train, homegrown fruits, lawn establishment, low maintenance and follow through, composting is sustainable recycling, yard maintenance and practical management, pesticide use, history, reality, safety, and sustainability, diagnosing, prevention, and cure of 34 common yard problems. And you even go into plants in pots and genetics. There's climate, weather resource, understanding insects, and nature in the garden, in somebody's backyard, in search of the green thumb. Can we talk about that for a minute? In
The
search
green
of the
thumb?
green thumb, yes.
Oh, yeah. The green thumb is magic. And the way that magic comes to the gardener is through time and experience, and sharing some of the magic with other gardeners, and some good folks that are well versed in that are master gardeners. Years ago, I used to teach master gardeners into Clemson Extension Service. And so everything, all the components of being an astute, savvy, field sensitive gardener makes up the issue of the green thumb. And everybody can get a green thumb. I mean, you could even paint your thumb green if you want to cheat, But through trial and error, sometimes in the yard, and I want to emphasize limited trial and error, because we don't have time for trial and error in a yard, because it's seasonal. But the components of the book can help folks take the thought of, I'll plant these cucumbers or these bell peppers or this pecan tree, and I'll do it according to the book, and then we'll see what happens. So the green thumb, what it does is, once a gardener starts small and has successes, they feel confidence, and confidence is everything. Once they get that feel of the soil, they don't wear gloves, they get the soil up underneath their fingernails and smell it, and realize what it can produce, and even in small areas, then it starts to dawn on them that this is all possible. I have used the tried and true practices, and they work, and I've produced some very large ears of sweet corn. So kaboom, then the gardener actually starts having sort of a faint greenness to the thumb. It's light, and little by little over years, that green gets darker and darker, and then it becomes verdant green to the point that it might even go to all the fingers. You never know. Sometimes it takes a little luck. And I thought about this the other day, even thought about the book and you, in the sense that we had a big storm come through here.
Yes.
Last week. And I sat out on my porch and watched it, and it blew the snot out of my sweet corn. And I thought, oh my gosh, people don't realize what farmers go through every day at the risk of the elements ruining hundreds and thousands of acres of corn and soybeans, and how risky it really is, and how rewarding it can be when things fall together. But that green thumb helps. But the green thumb is also based on knowledge. You can't just make this stuff up. You can't Google it. Half the time, Google people tell you half the story, and that's unfortunate. But that's what happens. And sometimes the things that your granddad did are not sustainable in terms of using pesticides and components that may not be healthy for the soil. But in the end, the green thumb is out there to help us promote health, a healthy yard, healthy soil, and health. As a matter of fact, one of my favorite subjects was catch. It's CATCH, and I worked with a group of youngsters, and they're 4-year-olds, years ago. And catch was a coordinated approach to child health. And it was to address child obesity, is what it was, by helping them learn to grow vegetables. And that's what we did, and had a heck of a lot of fun. It's been highly researched and been found to be very effective, and that's health. So it's taken, in this book, my message was to take sustainability, to keep the soil and the yard healthy, to get involved in the yard with growing different plants, including vegetables and fruit, to use the exercise to help us stay a little bit leaner, and to enjoy nutritious food. So that all comes to health. And with that kind of idea, what we have is balance. And the yard, the book promotes balance in the yard.
Is there a part of the book that you would like to read and share with our audience today?
Let me see. Martha, it's a big book.
It is a big book, and it's jam full of information that I think is all extremely informative. But perhaps there's a message in there that you would like to get across, or a particular idea that you'd like to share with us.
Well, the last chapter sums it up. Doesn't sum up necessarily the granular practices, but it sums it up. And I would say this would be part of it, is that Sustainability describes the ability of a living entity to continue to live by itself. A well managed, picturesque yard or garden is vibrant and manageable. It is a garden that exudes care and color without large expenditures of time, energy, and money. Sustainability means the garden will live on. It is manageable and thus maintainable. I have never had an owner ask for high maintenance plants. Why? It's because they're not sustainable. Sustainable gardening is more about the journey than the destination. It will have many rest stops along the way to pause, collect, curse, refresh, and enjoy. And I think that paragraph sums up much of the intent, much of the mission of the book that I put together. And it makes sense. The majority of what I do makes sense. It's not illogical. The beauty of connecting me to the book is I've been in 522 yards in the Greenville area in the last 11 years. I don't know how many yards I've been in 40 years because I never started counting until 11 years ago. But it's everything I see in other people's yards and how they treat their yards that also, back to one of your original questions, that drove me to think, wow, it could be so much better if we all collectively worked with sustainability in mind and the opportunity to enjoy our yards.
Well, thank you for that. The name of the book is Your Yard is a Garden: Sustainable Gardening for Landscaping, Lawns, Shrubs, Trees, and Produce by Mark J. Talbert. I see that you're wearing your T-shirt. I don't know, maybe that was your son's idea. Your yard is a garden right there. Good marketing. But how is the book available to people who are
Yeah.
interested in it?
Um, I will say this real quick on the name of the book, Your Yard is a Garden. Everybody said that's too long of a name. And to a marketer, it probably is. But I said, I'm not going to do all of everything I'm going to do without even trying to send a message right up front. Your yard is a garden. But it's available. It's available at Amazon.com. Through Amazon, it costs $39. It's available at our house for $30. And my wife, who's the business lady behind everything we do, she's happy to package it up and ship it out.
Okay, I'm going to have to ask you to rephrase that because we're a non-commercial radio station. I mean, we're available to non-commercial educational radio stations, and you're not really allowed to say the price. But so
okay.
I'm going to edit this part out. I'm going to ask you to repeat that and just say that it's available at Amazon and for a reduced price directly from the author, and maybe how they could get in touch with you that way.
Okay.
Okay.
Sure.
Thank you.
Martha, the book is available through Amazon, and it's available at our house, and we're in Greenville, South Carolina. And one of the ways to get in touch with us is the phone number is 864-263-3291. Another way to get in touch with us is talbertslandscaping.com. Another way is greenvillearealandscaping.com. I still am an active landscaper, but I'm much more interested in the book than digging holes.
Okay.
So there's several avenues that folks could go through to acquire the book.
Well, I want to thank you very much for your time today, Mark Talbert, author of Your Yard is a Garden. And I encourage our listeners to go out there and get in their gardens and use your book as a guide to make it sustainable and enjoyable.